Go ahead and get started. Liz?
Good morning. Welcome everyone to our second series on physician wellness with Dr. Anand Chakalingam, an MSMA member and your host for this morning's program. We're going to ask if you keep yourself muted. If you have any questions, go ahead and use the chat box function. So that way Dr. Chakalingam will be monitoring that so he can read your questions and get them ready to be answered. We're recording the meeting. The recordings will be available at the end of the series after May the 8th on the final series. So Dr. Chakalingam, I will return it over to you, sir.
Thanks so much, Liz, for giving us this opportunity to connect and meet our physicians and other health providers in this second session. I'll go ahead and share my screen. You're able to see my screen? Hear me okay? Okay.
Yes.
So Liz, if you can make sure people don't have to wait so that they can keep coming in as we move along.
Yes.
At any point, people are welcome to join us. And I'm happy to answer questions, but I'm not sure if my screen will show your question right away. So Liz is welcome to interrupt me, and anybody can unmute yourself and ask a question. But generally, if you keep it muted, that way we can sort of progress through what we want to do a little sooner. I don't have too much material to share today, so it's going to be hopefully more of a discussion type session. So feel free to stop me if you think that will help us to move the conversation forward. So we'll go ahead and get started. So today's discussion is about mindfulness tools to gain resilience while we are at work. So this is not interrupting our day-to-day work, 9 to 5, 7 to 6, whatever number of hours you're putting in. While you're working, how you might be able to gain resilience, relaxation, confidence, everything in that hours that you are at work. So when we look at what has happened within the last 20, 30 years, this is nothing short of amazing. What you're seeing here is the number of people coping with extreme poverty. In Africa, unfortunately, it seems to be sort of unchanged, but for much of the rest of the world, it has come down dramatically, especially in Asia and the Pacific. So this reduction is extremely vital to sustain a healthy global population.
She's at a conference.
There are some downsides also to people becoming more affluent. The biggest downside to that, I would think, is this transition happening within one generation. Children who are born extremely poor in the 1980s, maybe 90s, because of the society climbing out of that poverty, they are now suddenly able to access much more food. So that itself within a generation is dramatic change, which the body may not be able to take up very well. Some of this is discussed in Baker's hypothesis, where intrauterine growth retardation, small for gestation age children may be at much more risk for heart disease throughout life, especially if they gain weight. What we are seeing here is food portion in 1950 McDonald's or Burger King or any fast food restaurant. Fast forward to the present time, the same fast food restaurant for more or less the same cost is providing for the same one order. The portion size has increased several fold. So it's not like human beings have suddenly become that much more physically active or requiring that much more energy between the last few decades.
I don't mind the French fries growing.
Please
But I request
mute,
people to
please mute.
Thank you. So this is our reality. It is not only for our patients, but for physicians also. This is our reality. How we relate with our food. So the hunger gratitude experience is going to give us some more insight into how on a day-to-day basis through the workday we might be able to connect better with our food. Then the next thing I want to show you is what has happened for healthcare spending. I'm showing you mostly developed countries here. Western European countries like France and Germany, they are all at about 10% of GDP towards healthcare. Whereas in the United States, we are facing close to 18-20% of GDP going towards healthcare. Okay, we are spending much more money. Does it mean that our population is much more healthier? That becomes the real question. And then when we look at the amount of money spent, the US, it is continuing to increase over time. But if you look at life expectancy, we are actually dropping off compared to the other developed parts of the world. So this is alarming. We are putting in more money and getting less returns in the last few decades. What is the reason behind this? This may be one of the biggest explanations. If you look over the last 3 to 4 decades, obesity has gone up dramatically. And this increase in all adults is not unique to the US. The entire world is becoming more affluent. I just said that in the beginning of today's discussion. Poverty has gone down dramatically. But this obesity is biggest challenge, especially for the US population. That's what you are seeing here. Compared again to the developed parts of the world, we are seeing obesity is head and shoulders higher in the United States. It's closer to about 40% already. If you look at overweight plus obesity, then it is already at 75 to 78% of the US population is dealing with weight as a health hazard. Some of our colleagues who have joined from India, we cannot relax saying India is a poor country, developing country. No. If you look at urban India, the major cities, Chennai, Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, Bangalore, Hyderabad, what we are seeing is already alarming US levels, 35% obesity. In the rural areas, still there is challenge sometimes, and in the poor suburbs in big cities, but much of the urban India is already facing the obesity epidemic. So what do we mean by this excess weight? When we say normal weight, BMI has to be below 25%. 25. For India, normal is less than 23. Overweight is 29 BMI. For India, it is 23 to 25. It's not just India, it is for Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, because the risk for heart disease, metabolic syndrome, diabetes, hypertension is much higher even at lower BMI for people of these countries. The highest risk for heart disease is from the Indian subcontinent. If you look at obesity, BMI has to be over 30 for most of the world, except for Indian subcontinent, where BMI of 25 itself becomes obesity. So this is something that many people don't pay much attention to. Another parameter, some people are made bigger, some are muscular, they exercise a lot, build body, so muscle is much heavier. So BMI may actually not represent how much fat they have. It may falsely elevate the BMI. In those situations, the simplest measure is our actual waist circumference. For men and women, it is more than 40 and more than 35, considered a high risk. For the world, for India, because of the higher risk of vascular disease, It is waist circumference of 35 and 31 in women, 35 for men. So we talked about BMI, then we talked about waist circumference. Now, the best measure, if we can get it done in a local gym, and there are more sophisticated tests that can be ordered, but you can actually measure the body fat percentage. To do that, if men have less than 20, they will be in good shape for the most part. Women less than 30 body fat percentage is considered healthy. So there we have several tools. Weight is not the best. BMI is better. Body waist circumference directly measures visceral adiposity and may give us an easy way to track how we are doing. And if we can actually measure the body fat percentage, that would give the most scientific answer to how much excess fat there is. We all need some fat. If it goes below 10% body fat, then it is not healthy for us. Even the extreme athletes who are competing at the Olympics and sports, they still have about 10% body fat. So 20 for men and less than 30 for women is an excellent target for most of us to aim for. So I want to stop here and answer any questions people may have, because this is very basic stuff, but I'm sure some people may have some questions. Anybody? You'll have to unmute yourself if you would like to make any suggestions, discussion.
Sure, I'll ask a question. Thank you. How accurate are these like smart scales that they sell these days that advertise that they measure your target body fat at home?
I'm not too sure about the ones that you can take home and measure. I've not tried that yet. But I've tracked my body fat percentage at using a in-body machine. It costs about $3,000, $4,000, and we got one for our VA hospital recently to help our patients. But I got 1 or 2 years worth of data on myself, and it was pretty accurate because every time it would come back with the same number every 3 months. I was hoping I'll be losing a ton of body fat. Mine is about 18%, but that InSync thing is about $3,000 to $4,000 now. And for that, you'll have to put your hands, it has like a handlebar for the hands, and you'll have to come off your shoes and socks and stand on it, and it seems reasonable. And anything lesser than that, just by standing on it, I honestly don't have much experience. So if you can show that it's showing the same reliability, and if you can check it with a gym that has this in-body or some other system, then I think we'll be in a little better shape.
Thank you.
Any other questions about which is the best measure or what works best? Okay, so we have most people in here. So why don't we do one mindful exercise? For people who have joined us just now, we've been talking about what you see on the slide, which is what is the best way of assessing our weight. So we'll make a shift and we'll do this SOS, self-talk, observation, and silence. This comes from sports psychology and some mindfulness method, but it's something that we find may give our selves a little deeper insight into what's going on with the way we think and perceive reality. So I'm guessing everybody is muted. We want to leave you muted. I'm actually going to mute myself when I say, let's start. And what we want to do is, since nobody's going to hear us in this meeting, why don't we just talk aloud? If you can come up with some nice observations about anything, about today morning or this week, what happened. If it is negative, that is okay, but preferably something positive that you are thinking. Basically, I'm inviting you to talk, self-talk, and observe it. Just pay little attention to what thoughts you're thinking. So we'll do that for 1 minute. That's it. And then another 1 minute, we'll just stay quiet. So in 2 minutes, we'll come back and start continuing with what we are doing. So 1 minute of talking aloud and observing what we are saying to ourselves. Nobody else is listening. And then 1 minute of just smiling and or relaxing being aware of our breath and silently looking at the thought and bringing our attention back to the breathing. That's all we'll do. Any questions on what we are trying to do before we get started?
Everybody be unmuted, because if you're be muted, if you're unmuted, everybody's going to hear you're talking. Okay.
Yeah, make sure you're muted for your own privacy's sake. But we want you to observe what's going on in your thoughts by listening to yourself for 1 minute. And then for another minute, we'll just relax. Try to bring our attention back to the breath. Whatever thought comes, look at that gently and bring our attention gradually back to the breath. And in a couple of minutes, I'll interrupt you and we'll go ahead and get started. We'll start self-talk now. We'll go ahead and get started again. This is where I am today, at Table Rock. I've not been here in such a long time. It's such an amazing lake, 2 hours from Colombia, 2-3 hours. And we are here for the weekend. And I'm so grateful that I can still connect and we can all meet today. So you can hear me again, I'm hoping. There are some chats. We'll try to see what people are saying. First question was, do we prescribe specific diets? We're going to talk about that today. Typically, we try to minimize which diet to eat, what not to eat. We want people to figure it out for themselves. But by and large, if we can move more and more towards a plant-based diet with less meat and less empty sugars that come in the form of a soda, ice creams, cookies, donuts, basically anything that tastes good. Unfortunately, that's what it ends up being. We need to relearn taste. How we celebrate food, we need to rewire the programming. But it can be easily done. For that, the tool we are going to use is hunger gratitude experience. So we'll focus a little more on that, and we can keep coming back to what's the right thing to eat. But most important thing is to connect with hunger itself. So that's what we're going to spend more time today. The next question is, why is a definition of obesity different in India? It is just that people have realized that what happens to much of the world when the BMI is 35 or 40, 45 is happening to Indians and Bangladeshis and Sri Lankans when the BMI is only 26, 28, 30. So by keeping it even lower, the fat percentage in the body, we may be able to reduce our risk for coronary events, vascular events, strokes, things like that. So that's the only reason. And yes, the answer was there in the comment, next comment itself. So we'll go ahead and continue with some more slides. So when we ask whether our cup is half full or half empty, this question does not arise for this friend and patient of mine. 2 summers ago, he attended the 8-week Heartful Living Cardiac Wellness Self-Inquiry program with us at our VA. He's a veteran. And then right after the program, he had some symptoms, and we did some testing and found that he needed a bypass surgery. The next day, the bypass was scheduled, but he said, as a kid, as a young adult, after returning from Vietnam in my early 20s, I had gone on a 50-day fast because he had lost his brother. And he said, now I'm in my 60s. Now I have heart disease. Another cleansing is what my body needs. So he went on 50 days of only water. So at 45th day, he was so weak from losing muscle mass that we ended up admitting him to our VA hospital, giving him only fluids, but he refused even glucose through the veins till the 50th day. So not eating was dangerous, life-threatening. And then refeeding itself can cause so much electrolyte imbalances. So we had to very closely observe him for several days to refeed him. But after that, he has remained plant-based for the most part, and he continues once a week intermittent fasting. His weight has come down dramatically. And the reality is, after 2 years of this 50-day fast, and after assuming a healthier diet and once a week intermittent fasting for 24 hours, he has not had any more angina. His heart squeeze has become stronger. From 35-40% range, it has come up to 50%. And he has not had any more angina. So we don't recommend any prolonged fast beyond 24, maximum 36 hours. So if you finish dinner Tuesday night, the maximum scientifically we suggest is to skip until Wednesday evening, same time, 7 p.m., which is 24 hours. Or if you want to go a little longer, if you don't want to eat anything on Wednesday, you can try Thursday morning breakfast. So that will give you 36 hours roughly. So beyond that, scientifically, we don't feel it is safe. But this gentleman at 50 days, his heart did fine despite having multi-vessel blockages. The reason I bring it here with this half cup full or empty question is when the mind is willing to try this level of meditation. That's how I look at it. You cannot just go without food in reality unless you connect at a deeper level. He was so grateful. He said, I'm in a state of flow, I'm blissful. And he was nearly tearful out of joy. Just meeting me. I would go see him the last 3-4 days as he was at the hospital just to make sure his heart is staying stable. Nephrology saw him just to make sure his electrolytes were okay. And he didn't need any other support, but he did remarkably well through this program. And he's still doing great from the heart standpoint. So that's his story. So today we talked about self-talk and silence. So the reason I requested you to try that is in sports, people motivate themselves when they are giving their best and still not seeing the type of results. They try to cheer themselves. It can be done in group sports, it's done in individual sports like tennis, and you might be able to perform beyond your expectations when you encourage yourself. But then the real question I want to ask you is, if you are talking, who is observing? If you are observing, then who is talking? So is there two people inside our head? So we can simply say, for the discussion's sake, one is the logical, critical thinking mind. The other one is the subconscious, or that's how we frame it, so that we can understand how our mind and body works. So the core of consciousness, we can say, is our intuition, our inner voice, that is listening to our logical, critical mind talking. Okay? So that talk becomes so much more positive when we connect deeper and deeper with ourselves as a reality. And that is what this patient is showing us. And the question was what to eat, what not to eat. Olive oil, gingerly oil, vegetable oils may be okay, but best is to minimize all oils, because oil also has plenty of calories. But the most inflammatory things that you see in the red are red meat, processed and organ processed. Can you mute yourself? If you have a question, I'm happy to answer that. Please mute yourself. Okay, we'll continue. Refined carbohydrates, all the ice cream, cookies, donuts, soda, sweetened beverages, even fruit juices. I would place it here. Energy drinks that people use to run, even that becomes plenty of sugar and salt load. So what about fruit juices? Why not apple juice? The trouble is, the apples have so much fiber and they are more natural way of consuming energy, whereas the juice causes a sugar spike and our body does not recognize it as nutrition. Our body is very, very old, unfortunately. We are all several 100,000 years old, but our way of life is changing every 5 years. We are coming up with some new food fad and thing that is more interesting for us culturally. So that's what we have to recognize, how to connect with the body also. So that's why we encourage any type of fruit, even for diabetics. It doesn't seem to bother them that much. But you'll have to check your sugar levels to know if it really works for you. But vegetables for everybody would be perfectly healthy because they are designed with plenty of fiber in them. And lentils and whole grain and black beans, red beans, all these have so much protein in them, and they have good nutrition. Little bit of tea, coffee, maybe a glass of wine is okay. And the red foods that you're seeing are the most anti-inflammatory foods. If we can revolve our meals around those red foods, our body, especially our heart and our joints and our brain, will thank us for it over the years. So if you look outside, the blue outer circle is where we feel, oh yeah, this is what I'm used to eating, this is what I enjoy. But then our body says something different. It needs healthier things. The logical mind again will fight us. Then our instinct says, okay, I will trust and try something. But finally, when we come to the core, we must be enjoying good food. So that is the balance for which we can take several weeks, several months, and it can be a lifelong search also. We don't have to ever reach it. But as long as the journey is pleasurable, we are in good shape, finding how we can enjoy healthier things. So that what we think as life that we experience, it takes some little bit of sacrifice for us to connect a little deeper. For that, we use our own subconscious energy, which I believe is 1,000-fold more powerful than the logical mind and our critical thinking. So if we engage that, I think we can get so much healthier and happier and resilient to cope with all the work challenges that we face. And that allows us to stay grateful rather than think of it logically just before a meal for 2 minutes saying thanks. That is fine. But can we stay grateful through the 24 hours that we are awake? That is the hunger gratitude experience. And then our life itself becomes more engaging. So this self-inquiry we talk about starts waking up in the morning with gratitude. So don't get out of the bed until you're really, really grateful. It can be for just waking up. It can be for your child. It can be for golfing. It can be for the complicated pancreas surgery that you're going to do today, because you have trained for 10 years, you have worked for 20 years, and only you can save this patient's life. So that's a big blessing. So that gratitude, let it get you out of the bed. Let it warm you first. Feel that gratitude. And when you get out of the bed, that energy you will have throughout the day. That reduces the stress and makes you more optimistic. And that's a positive feedback. Also, we use that gratitude to be able to explore hunger. I feel the best day to go hungry for doctors might be Monday. The reason is Monday is a busy day. It's the beginning of the week. We are most stressed. But if we choose Monday morning to smile, to be grateful, and go to work without food, for that we have to first learn it on a Saturday or a Sunday or a Monday that we are off. It may take a couple of months to learn that our body does not need food that day. If we are pregnant, if we have type 1 diabetes, if we have advanced liver disease, eating disorders, we don't encourage fasting. But otherwise, if we can drink a couple of glasses of water and go on with our day all day long, our body will generally be okay. Within a couple of months, most of us can recognize that most complicated physical tasks, including surgeries, we might be able to do without any fear of fainting or getting dizzy. It takes a couple of months for the body to learn. Until my 45th year, I had not missed one single meal in my life. Every day I would have at least 3 meals. But luckily I was not big. I was not snacking at all. So when I started fasting at 45, it took 2 to 3 months. It would feel like the room is shaking, as if there is an earthquake going on by afternoon or evening time. But I persisted with it till I taught myself that I can continue to smile, be grateful, drink water. These are the simple things that are needed to let the body go into what we call natural ketosis or metabolic switching. After 3 months, now I can go 1 or 2 days. I can play tennis, I can bike. Body will still ask for food, but if I keep telling the body we have to continue this work, the body will come with me. So that I have learned, and now it's been 2-3 years. So now it's not a problem for me if I don't give the body food for a day. Monday is fine, Tuesday, any day of the week is fine for me not to give food to the body. So it allows that hunger, allows us to enter into a state of flow. That is simple empowerment, that we are alive and able to celebrate life even without food. That itself is huge power. And that gives us a much, much deeper insight into our mind and body connection. That reduces blood pressure, cholesterol, cortisol, glucose levels, triglycerides, everything comes down dramatically. Heart health improves. And this becomes a positive feedback, which I don't see why I would ever come out of. Just for myself to continue enjoying life, eating lesser food makes more sense. So that is what I want to invite you to explore. We talked about self-talk, and then we talked about 1 minute, and we experienced, I would say, 1 minute of silence. So what is a distraction? What is the silence moving us towards? Any distraction, our own mental constructs, our own ideas about growth, and even our news, innocuously watching television news, whatever channel you turn on, news is, I'm not saying it's, what should I say? News becomes very sensational. So that is the way they present it. So it ends up becoming personal for us. It makes us sadder. So for the last, I would say 25 years, I've requested all my cardiac patients to turn off their television, especially the news channel. And they've done so much better without the news. But still the news percolates. It comes to us through our life. Just because we sit in front of the TV and watch news, I don't think we are helping our heart. Next thing is wondering and worrying about the economy, so many other financial questions, and then connecting with the politics and government. Everything is important. I'm not saying these things are not relevant to the individual. What I'm saying is you have to recognize that for your subconscious, for your inner well-being, all of these things become distractions. That's all I'm saying. Even language, our own communication with everybody, that itself is a distraction from our reality. our thoughts, our intelligence, it distracts us from our reality. So this is the deepest reality that I've experienced, where if we can sit quietly and limit the thoughts also, that gives us much, much more freedom. So this I'd like you to try. And the simplest way to try this, you can not turn off all these things, turn off the Wi-Fi and sit for a few minutes. That is possible. Another way to turn off distraction is by stopping eating. When we are hungry, that subdues the external noises dramatically. Why? Because the hunger is a true inner experience. So when we are able to sit with that hunger, that it becomes a meditation at that point directly. So hunger is my invitation into silence. So when we are in silence, exercise awareness and smile experience, that we are going to talk about next week. It gives us so much ability to perceive variety in things we can do in sports, even upper extremity arm weight training and bicycle, because many of our cardiac patients have much disabilities and cannot get on a treadmill. For them, we do upper body work. And the body is so smart. It does a phenomenon called transference. That means if I keep working on my arm muscles, my legs are getting stronger at the same time. That is the miracle nature has. And then weight training is excellent, especially for people above the age of 40, men and women, 2 times a week for 20-20 minutes. If you can do low weight, high frequency, 10-12 reps, different muscle groups, weight training will make us so much more stronger and healthier. And then moving naturally is a beautiful concept, where instead of allotting 8 to 8:30 in the morning, I'm going to exercise. If our day is structured in such a way, the architecture is involving a lot of activity. For many people, their day-to-day job requires them to walk several miles. We come across them, but more and more of our human society is moving to the computer for work. So for them, moving naturally becomes harder. But another thing that can make us move naturally is a puppy. If you can have a dog at home, he's going to need to go out. So if you get a very small toy dog, he may not need much exercise, but anything bigger that is willing to get you out there for a few miles, that would be a simple way to stay active. So that is moving naturally, rather than committing this time, doing it because of your necessity. And entering flow. That's what I sent you a question. We will talk about it some more, hopefully today. So whatever we know by way of knowledge, I'm hearing a lot of noise. I hope you can hear me clearly. But if you cannot hear me clearly, I can raise my volume or go inside. If someone unmutes yourself and
We
tells
can hear you.
I'm sorry?
We can hear you fine.
Thanks so much, sir. So when we say knowledge, this accumulates over time and over generations. And this is the reason for our power and everything that we call a successful life. And that leads or comes out of learning, allows us to become more and more skilled, and makes us comfortable in our own habits. So the self-inquiry that we are discussing today is in some ways the opposite of any knowledge. It is actually unlearning. And this starts at zero for everybody. So there is no question of next generation getting anything from us. We can give our money to our children, but we cannot give self-inquiry. What about tomorrow morning? I cannot give it to myself also tomorrow morning. So unless I choose to get out of the bed grateful, then I cannot do self-inquiry. What I'm trying to say is there is no accumulation at all possible even for ourselves. This is so much in the present moment, in this space and time. It is living in the moment that is self-inquiry, that allows us to stay connected with that gratitude. And that is how we find our real fulfillment in life and resilience to cope with COVID or any other challenge that the next month or next year is going to bring us. Here, people asked earlier which diet is healthy. The monkey on the left side is a healthy monkey who is on the older side. He's about, I would say, the equivalent of a 90-year-old human being. They reach that age by 30 years. And this monkey for 10 years was an experiment. What they did to that monkey on the left side is they gave normal monkey diet every day. And the monkey was not on the bigger side or anything. He was a normal sized monkey with a normal BMI of 22. So what was the experiment? Giving him the same food that he was supposed to get. They were counting the number of jumps he would do. When he was a 50-year-old or a 60-year-old, he was jumping more, I would say, half of what he would as a teenager. But then by the time he turned into 80 or a 90-year-old, he stopped jumping altogether. And you see him below on the side profile where he looks his age. He's going to die soon. He's gotten really old. What about the monkey on the other side? This monkey, the one marked C on the right side, is the exact same age. You can see his side profile. He's jumping still like a young man or a middle-aged person. He's not behaving like a 90-year-old. He's also the same 30 years in monkey age. And what did they do to this group of monkeys? For the same 10 years, I'm not exactly sure how many years, these group of monkeys, they had a 30% calorie restriction. Same monkey food, same normal weight to start with, but for 10 years, it had skipped one meal. So instead of 3 meals, human equivalent, it decided to go on 2 meals. It didn't decide. We decided for it because it's a lab, we can choose how much this monkey eats. So it stayed hungry for a quarter of its life, and being hungry allowed him to stop aging, maybe reverse aging. So this is very profound. This is all science published 10 years ago. Some say, oh, Anand, you're talking about aging studies. What about humans? This is calorie 1 that was a feasibility study, and then calorie 2, it's already published. This is in humans with normal BMI of 25. They are roughly about the age of 30, 35, and BMI is 25. They lost 10 kilos over 2 years by taking a 25% calorie restriction consistently over 2 years. And inside normal blood pressure, cholesterol, inside normal sugar numbers, their parameters became, biologically, they became 5 to 10 years younger. Healthy, normal weight human beings, by taking a calorie cut, they are becoming younger and even healthier. So the question is, will that mean they'll live longer? The answer is, we don't know that yet, but very, very likely they'll probably end up living, if they continue this, 200 years, 110 years. We think so, but we haven't done that study yet. And this study was closed at 2 years. There are some societies, communities that people are eating lesser on their own, and we may have some studies out of that group. But there are some blue zones. I didn't bring that material today, I don't think, but you can just Google blue zones and find that in Loma Linda in California, in Costa Rica, in Sardinia in Italy, and in Okinawa in Japan. People are known to live 10, 15, even 20 years more than the rest of the world by staying not only alive, but staying so busy and active and healthy and part of community. They don't have retirement homes that they go to. They just continue to do their life work, and that work is physical. And they are all moving more naturally and eating little lesser. So these are, we would tend to think these are primitive ways of life, but they are more connected with their community. They have plenty of very good friends. In the US, average number of friends is about 1.5 for human beings in the Western world. There in the blue zones, they are averaging about 6 good friends throughout life. So that's such a huge amount of wealth that they have in a different form. They don't have it in the bank balance, but they have it in a different way. So this was, I have the reference here, and Liz can share these slides with anyone interested also after this discussion. This is another thing that looks at resilience, not only in humans, but in all animal forms, including unicellular bacteria to rodents, to monkeys, to human beings. When we are socially stressed, our resilience goes down. When we cut down on food intake, our resilience dramatically increases. And physical exercise and sleep increases our resilience. We are all going to age. Time cannot be stopped. But till our end, we may be much more resilient if we follow a little healthier lifestyle. Some of the things that work for that monkey picture I showed you could work for human beings. And in the last 5 years in Heartful Living, we've seen so many 80-year-old heart patients feel like they are only 40, 50 years old. And that's through calorie restriction, through weight reduction. But many of them were obese to start with and not compatible with a healthy heart, so they did it. But there are several of my patients who have started out with a normal BMI and who are now able to quit the cigarette, have better sexual function, connect more with their children, grandchildren, and work employees, and trust their colleagues. So it makes a mental transformation when they connect with fasting. To share our own group's experience, in our cardiology division, I would say we have about 20 cardiologists and 20 cardiology postgraduates or fellows. At least half of our faculty and fellows now in the last 2-3 years are trying intermittent fasting, 1 day in a week, and then 14 to 16 hours overnight they are not eating anything. So this is a way to improve our physical health and our mental resilience. Our colleagues are doing it. We are taking it to the American College of Cardiology. We are taking it to our VA providers, different societies. And I've taken this to psychiatry groups also, because there are some groups that try to help physicians cope with the burnout issues. There also, we've discussed these concepts and they are embracing it. I've requested one of them to come and say hello to us next Saturday. So they may come and share some of that experience with us next Saturday. This is what this hunger thing I explained to patients. Today I had a good breakfast, so I am now at about 6 feeling good. I didn't eat too much, like 8, 9, where I'd feel sick and too full. We recommend people to start eating at 4 and stop at 7 and keep that going. If your BMI is 22, that's perfect. But what if your BMI is 33, 43, 53, 63, 73? We have so many people who need to lose weight. For them, staying between 4 and 7 is not sufficient to gain the health that they need. For them, we have to teach them how it is possible to explore 3, 2, and I went to 1. And that's where at 1, it took me 2 to 3 months to recognize how to comfortably teach my liver to go into natural ketosis, by which it's mobilizing the fat in my body and producing ketones sufficiently to provide enough energy for me to go through my day-to-day work, patient care or biking or playing tennis or whatever else I want to do. But I would definitely be more comfortable if I have plenty of water. Water allows that ketosis metabolic switching to happen sooner. So once that happens, now I don't go to 2 or 1. As soon as I am at 3, the body knows that he is not getting food. Anand is still smiling and sitting around. The food is right next to him. When we are starving, we are anxious. Where is the food going to come from? But when we are fasting, the food is right beside us. We are just postponing it. So it's actually relaxing. It's a meditative process. And from 3, my body quickly goes into 4, sometimes into 5, and stays there for several more hours. And then after several more hours, again, I feel hungry. And at that point, the choice is still there, whether the liver has to go into more ketosis. And we can keep pushing it for 18, 20, 24, 36 hours without trouble. And I have so many people who have done it for religious reasons for 5 to 7 days. Again, as cardiologist, my request to you is to just learn this and try it up to 24 hours, up to 36, beyond 18 to between 18 to 36 hours might be the best sweet spot for cancer risk reduction. Autophagy optimally starts at about 14, 15 hours. So if you are really interested in reducing your cancer risk, trying this for up to 36 hours, maybe once a month, may be ideal. But typically my patients, we request them 14 hours every night, not to get any food into their body, just water. And then once a week, 18 to 24 hours is very doable for most of our patients, except for the few conditions we talked about, like cirrhosis or type 1 diabetes, brittle and hypoglycemia prone, and then pregnancy and eating disorders. So this is what it all comes down to. I thought I was eating very healthy all my life. My parents are both physicians. I didn't have the emotional craving for too much food, but many people have that challenge. We need to recognize that we are just craving for specific fancy, sugary, fatty foods. But what I did for 45 years was habitual eating, thinking eating on the clock is the best way to stay healthy. But in the last 3 years, I'm much more healthier and happier, and I can actually play tennis on the cement courts with 20-year-olds on more frequency than I did when I was 40 or 42 years old. And that's because my inflammation has gone down by doing this hunger-based, physical hunger-based eating. So unless I'm really hungry, I don't put any food in my body. Compared to a few years ago, my overall intake is probably about 50 to 60%. So I'm basically hungry for the last 3 years, and I'm more fit and more energetic physically. And I want you to explore it if it's your truth. If it's not your truth, you give it up. But if it works for you, you may be surprised after a few months that you're healthier because you tried it. So this is specific foods. The middle one is just a convenience, so that food doesn't come in our way of our busy life. But physical hunger, food comes in our way. Thought of food comes in and disturbs our busy schedule, but the thought is good. Being hungry is a basic healthy experience that we should not miss out on a day-to-day basis. That's what I'm trying to remind us. And then here we are really open to all foods. I say that, but I'm most open to a banana when I'm hungry at 24 hours of fasting. If there is a banana, that's the first thing my body really wants. And then goes away once we eat good food. And eating here is really satisfying. We feel grateful for hunger, and then we feel grateful for eating. So the gratitude that we woke up with does not diminish through the entire day, that we have gone to work, that we have fasted, and then we have celebrated food. So if gratitude is still there throughout this picture once we connect with physical hunger. Intermittent fasting, it's the biggest thing that people are talking about, and it's really, really helpful. You see the bottom thing here, I'm saying people who do this once a week for 24 hours will likely live 100 years because of 80% reduction in heart attack, stroke, cancer, dementia. All these things go down dramatically if we give 1 day holiday for food in a week. Still, hunger is unpleasant. People are just coping with it, waiting for the 100th birthday. And they're able to do maybe 20-30% calorie restriction. In our hunger gratitude experience, we have 80-year-old heart patients who are able to do 70% calorie restriction. How is that? Because this is not a diet, it is not a lifestyle, it is a meditation. And apart from all these health, physical benefits, people become more connected with their mind body. And that gives them the resilience, optimism, and confidence to do so much more safely without being supervised, without needing a Fitbit and without needing calorie counts. None of my patients maintain a diary of calories. For them to check their weight once in a month is a big deal. For them to check their blood pressure once a week is a big deal. They are busy having fun with their life. They don't care that much about what goes in. They enjoy what they eat, but they connect with being hungry. That is the real balance that they find. And here they accept hunger gratefully. And this 60-70% calorie restriction, now I have patients doing that for 3 to 5 years comfortably. And they've lost 20-30% of their body weight. Whereas with gastric bypass surgery, if you look at the evidence, it's about 15 to 20% range. So we are actually seeing even beyond gastric bypass range. And here there is no surgery. So the process starts with gratitude, smiling 20 times every waking hour. And then in that process, they find that this is possible. This is an example of a patient that I just met last month. She's 70, and in the last 1 year, you can see the x-axis, May 2020 to May of 2021, she has been hospitalized 15 times. And that's the spikes you see, her weight going up the x-axis and the y-axis and coming down each time she's back in the hospital. We give her medicines to bring the weight down. Why is she needing 15 hospitalizations? Because at that age, a BMI of 43 is so challenging for the body to cope with. Her resilience that I showed you in that earlier graph has gone down just because of aging, and her weight is making her hard of breathing. I sat down and explained our program to her. So I'm hoping by May of 2022, she would not have any more hospitalizations. Is that my wishful thinking? I don't think so. The reason is we have people who have done that. I have this person I want to show you who in beginning of 2020, she had the same issue of being extremely obese. And she had on top of it, heart failure, lipid problems, and type 2 diabetes at 73 years of age. And she assumed our intermittent fasting, and she smiles, and she volunteers the altruism compassion experience, which we're going to talk about next week. And she has lost 30% of her weight all within a year. And she feels 50 years younger, and took herself off all the medicines. She doesn't need them. She went to her primary doctor and they decided you don't need these medicines because your numbers are looking great. So she's really made a huge turnaround. This is not just one person. Here, the x-axis, you're seeing time of less than a year. And in the y-axis, you can see how much weight she has. This is a medical record graph. So it's not something we wrote. You just got it. 104 kilograms was the highest weight she had. And currently she's at 70 kilograms, which is 30% weight reduction. So I will stop there. Oh, okay. So this is just the happiness of the entire world. If you look at the entire world, on average, we are about 5.3 in a scale of 10 as far as happiness is concerned. And all this, I think we can cover next time. So I'm going to stop this. Wow, I didn't realize I went already close to 10 o'clock. I'm glad I stopped at least a few minutes we can have for question answers. I'm here as long as Liz will allow us. Please unmute yourself. I didn't view any chat questions, so I'm inviting people to
Yes,
do us
there is a
discussion.
question in the chat box. Can you explain the C or SI in the meditative experience?
Self-inquiry. SI is self-inquiry, and that has been with us for the last, I would say, 5 to 10,000 years. And we can talk some more about it. I thought I spent only 10 minutes today. I've taken close to an hour. But self-inquiry means asking the question, who am I? What is life about? So that is the direct answer to self-inquiry is that, who am I? So Ramana Maharishi is one of the most recent people who did that. He probably died about 50 years ago. And his main teaching was silence. Whereas for 1 hour I spoke, and I'm saying I don't even remember that I spoke for an hour. But at least 1 minute I allowed you to stay with your silence. So after this session is closed, my invitation will be for you to spend 10 minutes before you start your rest of your day. After Liz and we close our session, please spend 10 minutes just sitting, relaxing. And that silence is something that you can find through your own hunger. That is the clue that I'm giving you today. Self-inquiry means that, and if you go to highlifejourney.org, you learn so much from the 8 hours of recordings that we have. And yeah, I don't want to keep on answering that longer so that we can have more time for more questions.
Okay, thank you. There's another question in the chat box from Dr. Hagen. If you would read it, Dr. Chokalingam, it's
the last question is, why does heart disease occur at a lower BMI in Indian patients than others? Are there other populations where heart disease occurs at lower BMI? We've been looking at this for several decades, and we don't have a clear-cut answer. But the simplest way I look at it and talk to my patients is, the Indian subcontinent has been through a lot of droughts and famines for several centuries. So our people are used to lesser food. Now the sufficient food is actually toxic to us. So it's like saying a fuel efficient car that has only a 10-gallon, 15-gallon tank. If we are saying, oh, all my life I've driven a huge SUV, I'm going to put 40 gallons of gas. The first 15 will go into the gas tank. The rest, the only way we can take it in our journey is by putting it in the back seat or the front seat, that gas that we fill. So that's what is happening. Our body does not tolerate food this much. So food gets to become toxic sooner. And then that's not the only answer. I believe our way of life has changed so dramatically. People are running further and trying to accomplish more, trying to come out of poverty. So, and even in the big cities where people are affluent, they're trying to work harder, more hours, sleeping lesser. Just the modern social way of mobility that is making the same life is more stressful for the Indians. And the coronaries may be a little smaller. We may be more prone for atherosclerosis. But by and large, the only ways to reduce the risk is the same ways that we know of, the standard risk factors: smoking, sleep, hypertension, diabetes, cholesterol. And then weight becomes so much more important for the Indian people to keep it as low as potentially possible. But there was some talk about lipoprotein little a and other things, but all that is still being discussed. The standard risk factors, if we control, we can still reduce. for the rest of the world, if you can reduce 90 to 95% heart attack, for the Indian people, at least 70 to 85% of the heart attacks we can reduce by the standard risk factors.
Another question in the chat box is, what amount of sleep do you recommend?
You should feel fresh in the morning and fresh throughout the day. So some people find that by 6 to 7 hours, ideally 7 to 8 hours for most adults should be good, 7 to 9. Sleep apnea is such a deal now. So check with your wife if you're not sleeping through the night, and go to a sleep specialist, get it checked out, because we are seeing it even in normal BMI and thin people, that sleep apnea is becoming more and more of a concern. It may also have something to do with our mental stress and the way of our life. This generation, we are seeing so much more sleep apnea. So if we have that, so even if we are in the bed for 8-10 hours, we'll still wake up tired. So that's something to look out for.
I do want to make an observation. 2 weeks ago, MSMA hosted our annual convention, and throughout the week between our two House of Delegates, we hosted an evening CME session, of which with MSMA, because I'm MSMA staff, I co-hosted those Zoom meetings. So I was on my computer from 6:30 to about 8:30, 4 nights in a row. I'm never on my computer after 4:30, 5 o'clock, and I rarely look at my phone of an evening. And for those 4 nights, I had trouble sleeping and staying asleep because I was in my computer for that long a time. And I think until you see a before and after, you really don't realize how much screen time, whether it's a small or a big desktop, whatever it is, how that affects your sleep.
So Liz, I'm so glad what you brought today. I would like our world to go back to the time when we didn't have electricity. That's not that long ago. If you go back only 100 years, we didn't have electricity. So when the sun goes down, we all have to take some time to relax. When I talked briefly about blue zones, that they are not that reliant on electricity, or they may not even have it. They are the hardy parts of the islands in Japan and Sardinia, Italy and Greece. And the thing is, we are going to live with electricity. That's the only way we are connected to each other today. But what you described is self-inquiry. You asked, what is self-inquiry? See, you did that through your life. You made a determination not to spend much time on the devices. And then for a few days, you did some computing because your work required you to. And now you come back with a deeper self-understanding. So that is what we can continue to do. Finding out who we are, that very profound question, and the philosophical, we can say, or spiritual. But this self-inquiry we can do throughout our day. And that is what is this hunger gratitude that will only allow us to stay that much more connected and sleep better.
There's another long question in the
I'm going to
chat
read
box.
it fast. Body shame. Any mention over being overweight is often called body shaming, and any other mention of weight is considered cruel. Even in the doctor-patient related patients are often resentful of discussion of body weight. Is there any chance? This is the most important challenge that doctors are facing. One, doctors are also on the bigger side now. And they are also on, if you come to the physician's lounge of our hospitals anywhere in the world, you'll see a lot of the unhealthy foods we talked about. And we are also snacking just to be able to do our day-to-day work. So until we started this Heartful Living in 2015. Then also I was not talking much about weight, or I would talk about calorie restriction for our cardiac patients. But in 2018 summer, when I myself started fasting, then I could look at my patients in their eye and request them to consider going into hunger, to try intermittent fasting. And they were able to connect with me without being resentful, because they realized this doctor is only on their side and trying to help them. So that's the only way I would frame it. The day I stop fasting, I will have to really, really back off on saying, you need to lose some weight. But until I can continue that fasting, I believe I have some connection with them that is there as soon as I enter the patient room, that I can sit down and honestly tell them, let us work on this. It's going to get us stronger and healthier. So that is my real reason for bringing hunger gratitude to this meeting, because I want our physicians to become resilient. That's the most important thing. But that resilience will translate into patient care also.
Hey, Dr. Chokalingam, this is Ramachandran. As you know, I work with children, and all your examples start with older people. Where if I look at the life of a person, in the initial whatever 2 or 3 decades, you are sort of growing and getting in a positive nitrogen balance, and then you sort of start aging. What's the best time to start this? Is it okay in the 20s? Is it better in the younger age, or should we start only after 45, like your example?
So I was hoping you'll not mention my age to the whole group, but you did. Thanks so much.
I must say, you did it a few times yourself. So.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. So thanks so much for that question. The answer is, now that is where I'm going to focus for the next 5 years. How we can change our health from before we are born. From the mother's health, from our grandmother's health, we need to start. It is so important that nutrition, because we don't realize how intrauterine growth retardation occurs. Some of the smoking and other unhealthy habits during pregnancy may cause intrauterine growth retardation, but even now, majority cases we don't understand. Psychological stress may play a role. So if those things are improved, when our society becomes and more holistic and more connected with nature and tries to spend more time with exercise and staying ideal weight and avoiding unhealthy eating, the next generations will start out better. So we are born, we'll start there then. From birth itself, eating right is important. So if we are overweight, large for gestation children, they are the highest risk for obesity throughout life. Small for small birth weight children, infants, they are at high risk for heart disease straight away, whether they gain weight or not. But if they cross percentiles and gain more desires, then they become more risk. So healthy eating is important at every age. But the question then becomes when to start fasting. I would think when the person recognizes that it is okay for me to have the food and delay it little. It is okay for me to stay hungry. Being hungry is not hurting me. It is a way of being healthy. Then it is good. So probably around the age of 10 to 12, it should be okay. But by above the age of 18, science says it is okay to do intermittent fasting. But many religions, I've seen many people in the US, Orthodox Christian faiths and different cultures in India, in the Arabic world, where people say above the age of 10 to 12, people are doing some form of their own religious fasting. BMI, I'm maintaining it, that's so important throughout life, starting from first year of life itself. You are still muted, right?
Oh, sorry. In the neonatal literature, with premature babies, they are saying that in the first, few months when they are in the NICU, the physicians are setting their metabolic rate by, arbitrarily saying, I'm going to give 180 calories per kg and things like that. And that persists through there are many instances where, children who are born premature with IUGR end up needing obesity surgery at 16 years of age because of the high BMI. So they are.
This is something that I'm working with my colleagues in India. They're actually my mentors. They're much more senior to me, Dr. Pandians, and they actually helped me write a paper in Missouri Medicine about insulin resistance that came out in the latest edition of Missouri Medicine. What we are saying is insulin resistance was originally for antibodies because of impurities. Now we are just using the term more loosely for any obesity-related type 2 diabetes. It's now called insulin resistance, unfortunately, just because we are finding it challenging to use excess weight or nutrition directly. And they are all, because they are both gynecologists, Indians, are working with me, and we are trying to draft something for a lot of people in different parts of the world, how to stay nutritious, how to keep your children healthy from birth. And this is exactly what they're talking about. When 3 children are born to the same parents, one child is 2 children, one child is normal weight, the other one is small weight or premature. Their gut is smaller. If you give more fuel, it only becomes toxic sooner. And that's exactly what you're saying. Over 10 years of overfeeding, by 16th year, they are needing gastric bypass surgery. So that I have not yet looked at it specifically, but with your help, we can explore that further and try to come up with some ways that they should stay within that same decile. If they are born in the lowest decile of weight, staying there with good nutrition and good exercise may be healthier for them than crossing to higher and higher weights. By giving them more food, they're not going to become more athletic or perform better when they are 15 or 25. Keeping them without getting excess body fat percentage may be so crucial to minimize their otherwise substantially increased cardiovascular event risk throughout life. So I'm happy to work with you also and try to see where we can take that. So you've already had to operate on people like that? You're still muted, sir.
There's two more questions, and then we'll close it up. How do you counsel an activity while starting fasting?
Simplest way is to not do much physical activity when you're fasting, so that you learn what it is. It's going to make you feel uncomfortable, make you irritable, and the room is sort of blacking out. So smile some more, connect with that gratitude. And if the body really asks for food, give it food. Food is not bad, but hunger is good. So next time you come around a few days later or a few weeks later, you may be able to stay a little longer. But once you learn it, then after 3 months, then I started exploring. Can I walk? Can I run? Can I bike? Now, after 36 hours of fasting, I can play tennis for 2 hours. I won't win that match, most likely. I'll be a little slow because ketones don't give that fastest speed of movement I need to have the reflexes. But if I have to bike or run, I can still do about 95% of what I can do on a full stomach. I mean, after a full regular nutrition on a long fast. So fasted exercise is an excellent way of helping our health. So fasted exercise would start at about 15 hours, 12. So overnight, if you haven't eaten anything, best time is to exercise in the morning. But don't feel shy to exercise. Once you learn fasting for whatever number of hours, towards the end of that fast, build in some exercise. It's really good. But after that exercise, within half an hour, give yourself good nutrition. Then you will be helping your muscle strength grow up also.
And then the last question from Dr. Hagen, he says, most of your methodology on lifestyle is also cited to reduce the risk of dementia. Do you have data on reduction of dementia with your programs?
No, we don't have direct data, but what we know is dementia is now most often vascular, which is very similar to the coronary artery disease, stroke, and carotid disease. So that type of vascular disease, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, the hypertension, these are the things that is causing the biggest bulk of dementia in this modern day and age. So by reducing our cardiovascular event risk through lifestyle, through improving resilience, through intermittent fasting, and more of an anti-inflammatory diet, which comes mostly from plants, we can extrapolate that data and say that vascular dementia risk goes down 80%. And that's the reason I'm saying dementia will come down. Do we have proof? Not yet. Will we have proof? I don't know if I will be able to help with generating that evidence. But through these risk factor reductions in our own population in the next 5 years, we can show that their projected risk of dementia will come down. Like that, we can make some projections, I believe.
So Dr. Chockalingam, any final thoughts before we close out this session?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thanks so much, Liz and Dr. Hagen, for giving us this opportunity.
Well, have a good weekend, everybody, and we'll see you next Saturday.
And one more quick request. Next Saturday, 9 o'clock, please bring 2 grapes. 2 grapes. If you are allergic to grapes, you find some other fruit that you enjoy, but please bring it. We need it for our mindful session. And I gave you this email about ease. I don't know if people had a chance to answer the BFIT scale, BEFIT. Anybody tried that scale?
Mm-mm.
Did you get the email, Liz?
No, I have not. I did not get the email. I joined this one though. This one. So
try to send it out again.
okay.
And if you can answer that, we'll talk about how that exercise is going to make us that much more mindful next Saturday when we connect. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Have fun.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.